So I noticed a couple threads on Reddit talking about the use of guides, and I felt like weighing in. As a person on the internet with an opinion, I'm entitled to voice it as the superior position, and all who disagree with me are obviously wrong. But in all honesty, I felt like this is a good topic to visit, with Diablo 4 fast approaching. Before I dive into the Reddit threads and comments, I do want to sum up my feelings on guides. When I was a kid, I used to use them all the time. Even before the internet, I would try to find strat guides, guidebooks, and gaming magazines for any game that I was enjoying. Part of the joy for me was diving into the worlds and fully understanding every aspect. Any time that couldn't be spent gaming was spent reading about the games that I was playing. Now, was this just my personality of wanting to be good at games? Was this competing with my siblings and looking for an edge and ways to be better than them? Was this a byproduct of me just being poor, renting games, and being on a time crunch to complete them? Honestly, I'm not really sure. As an adult, I couldn't game as much as I used to. Responsibilities got in the way, and I only had a few hours every couple days to play games. If I found myself with a spare 10 or 15 minutes, I would just consume as much media as I could for the games that I was playing. News, update videos, patch notes, guides, tips and tricks, all of these became regular media that I would consume. This was my way to still enjoy the games that I liked, even if I didn't have the time to play them. In this way, when I did sit down to play, I had something to sort of focus my efforts on. The precious hours I had to game could be spent making progress, and I could continue to try the new content that I had been looking forward to. So long story short, I personally have always found guides to be useful tools for gamers. However, not all gamers feel the same way I do, and there's nothing wrong with that. We can all enjoy the content the way we want to. So now that you know my history with guides and my feelings, let's dive into Reddit and see what everyone else is saying. There are actually two threads that I want to focus on. The first one is Diablo 4 looks perfect to enjoy guideless, and the second one is you don't need a guide to enjoy a game. So looking at the Diablo 4 is perfect to enjoy guideless thread, the original post kind of went like this. So what I've experienced in the beta and saw from Blizzard feels like Diablo 4 is perfect for guideless play. Moreover, I think they balanced around it for the most deep and rewarding experience, it being playing guideless. The poster continues with, meta builds and progression paths will trivialize the content, but Diablo 4 is a game where the process itself is more rewarding than its end goals. Understandable, but fairly deep systems lead to meaningful decisions and consequences to be experienced in smooth battles. The only other ARPG I can remember enjoying guideless was Last Epoch. The counterexample for me is Path of Exile, where several builds I tried myself were so suboptimal that I was gated out of huge chunks of content. Best hopes for Diablo 4. And I think the poster here was mainly talking about their own personal expectations. They feel like they can enjoy this game guideless. They haven't had that experience in a while, especially with the ARPG category, and they're going into it very hopeful. Alright, so this was actually, a fairly decent post. Everything seemed fine, so let's jump into the comments and see what some of the commenters had to say. So one of the comments says, I feel like age matters here. People who gamed pre-internet are probably less likely to always follow guides. I was a gamer who played pre-internet, and I still liked to use guides. I feel like this generalization is just being projected and doesn't really help move a conversation or really have any place in a conversation. And then we have this thread here where the poster says, I think it's more of a matter of personality. This person has been diagnosed with OCD and they've got it mostly under control. So they're a 40-something-year-old gamer and they personally can't play games without reading up on it. So Final Fantasy 1 through Final Fantasy 6 are an older style of game that did actually have missable items. Missable items are not something you see as much in new games. So I can sort of see this person's point of view and understand where they're saying they prefer to collect everything and they don't want to miss it. There's a response directly under this, and they're kind of highlighting the same thing where they say when they play games like Final Fantasy that they're only going to play one time. They just want to go ahead and get everything while they're playing through so they can get the full experience. So here's a comment about calculators. Now, to me, calculators come up a lot of times when people are talking about guides versus no guide conversations. I feel like there's typically guide, no guide, and people who like to use calculators. In my view, calculators should be considered the same thing as using a guide. They allow you to min-max on paper instead of doing it in game, so you can create a path of progression for yourself. You know exactly what items you need, where you need to go, what you need to do. To me, this is actually just making your own guide. While it's not the same as using someone else's pre-made guide on the internet, more than likely, you will probably end up with the same or similar results as countless other people just based on the fact that you used a calculator. Now, obviously, this one's going to be one of my favorite comments. It's amazing how people won't get this. The streamer did it. You mean the guy with the webcam? Now, there's been a lot of hate towards streamers in recent times. It's sort of been bubbling up, and I get it, or maybe I don't. It doesn't really matter if I understand it. The important part here is that streamers are typically people who play a lot of games. While they're not inherently experts, most of them just have considerable hours in a specific game. Having said that, not all streamers are created equal, just like not all news reporters are created equal. Always make sure to vet your information and make your own informed decision. There's no reason to sort of blanket hate on streamers and content creators in general. Now let's jump onto the other thread. You don't need a guide to enjoy a game. Hey people, so I keep reading posts with people asking for guides or asking for streamers to follow so they can min-max, etc. for when Diablo 4 comes out. Play the game however you want, and you will learn and adapt. Yes, if you enjoy that, absolutely do it. Talking about finding content creators and guides. But I just want to say that you don't need any of that to enjoy a game. You just don't. Everyone's playing the game for the first time. Nobody's going to have the ultimate build the first few weeks anyway. That's true. Just relax, enjoy the story, the fun. It's not a competition. Getting to the end faster won't get you any prizes, unless it's server's first max level achievement or world's first or something like that. Remember, it's a game. You're playing to have fun, to enjoy with your family or friends, to get away from your mom, girlfriend, or whatever. Signed, Filthy Casual. Alright, so let's hop into the comments and see what people think about this. I don't have time to spend 10 hours a day trial and error testing shit. It's a huge time saver to follow someone else's guide instead of spending dozens of hours learning and testing everything. And I honestly feel like this comment shows why some people would choose to use a guide. Testing and trialing the game and enjoying the experience is one way some people really like to play. But other people don't have the time, or would rather spend their time playing the game instead of trying to figure out how to play the game. Alright, so we have a post that starts off, my fondest gaming memories of me playing games for the first few months, being clueless, but still really excited. As I grew older, I started paying attention to guides, streams, and stuff like that, partially because I don't have as much free time to afford being clueless, but it did definitely take away from part of the fun. To which I can say I kind of understand this, right? But then the response to this is, what does that even mean? Can't afford to be clueless. If immersing yourself in a game's systems isn't something you can afford, why play the game or any game in the first place? If it's for the story, you could just watch a Let's Play or a cutscene compilation. If it's for dopamine, you could just do drugs. Really? I don't mean to be rude. Yeah, you did. But I just can't grasp the point of playing a game only to circumvent the learning curve. What is your goal in said game? If it's fun you're after, would it not be more fun to take the game at your own pace and learn as you go? Why the rush to get there is what I'm saying. So for this person, I feel like no matter what you say to them, they're not going to understand because they're coming into this with a preconceived notion that the only way to enjoy the game is the way they play it. To me, the original poster was talking about their time being precious and they can't afford to waste time in a game not doing what they want to do because they don't get a lot of time to game. In this sense, they value their time and want to play the content, not play the game to figure things out just so they can play the game. I know the commenter here said they didn't mean to be rude, but I feel like the only way to take this comment was by being rude. I found another thread in here where the original poster was pointing out that there was already a topic about this, and then they go on to say that you don't really need a guide for any game. If you want to be better optimized, min-max, or play on higher difficulties, then you will likely want to use a guide, especially if you're new to the genre. And I feel like that's a pretty standard response, right? And then the first response is, so only guide makers can figure shit out, which really doesn't add anything to the conversation. And then a little bit further down, a comment pretty much just says, if you're new to the genre or casual, 9 times out of 10, you're going to sort of turn to guides. I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing or demeaning. It's just allowing people to play and enjoy the game with the amount of time they have. And then the final post is actually the one that I'm most interested in. So the final comment on here really kind of highlights there are differences in playing the game and different people enjoy different things. Do you want to play the game, or do you want to play an Excel spreadsheet calculator and test before you even start playing the game? The question is really where you want to invest your time. I think the best way to take this comment is just showing that different people value their time differently and enjoy different parts of playing games. And there's nothing wrong with that. So the final comment I actually want to look at is going to be this one here. And I'm not going to read the whole comment. You can kind of read through it yourself. But at the end of the day, this person talks about the final boss fight in World of Warcraft's latest expansion. Specifically, they talk about taking on the final boss without guides, mainly because there were no guides when they were doing it. They were one of the first teams to do it. I honestly think this highlights a little bit of the difference between ARPGs and other multiplayer games. Most ARPGs are typically played solo. At least you're not punished for playing solo. Because of that, if you decide not to use a guide, take your time, the only real person it affects is yourself. So other large multiplayer games do have things called blind runs. What a blind run is you go in with a team, none of you have any knowledge, you figure it out together, and then you move on. These can take a lot of time, and everyone has to be up for that. If you went into a team and you didn't tell people that you were naive to the mechanics, this would be considered throwing, unless everyone else had signed off on you doing it. You would be crippling your team by not knowing what you were doing and forcing them all to pick up your slack just so you can enjoy going in with no knowledge. Also, I do want to highlight, while we're on this topic, not watching a guide, but then having people explain everything to you while you're in some type of encounter is the exact same thing as watching a guide. It's just way less effective. Okay, so where do we stand? Having said all that, I feel like the word guide has sort of lost its meaning. A guide is something that shows you a path through, but you personally still need to walk it. Guides are meant to be starting points, not the end goal. Whatever is in a guide is typically there to help you complete some task, but you may have to adapt it to your individual playstyle. Treating guides as rigid, unflexible, must-do rules can and will lead to failure. But let me know what you think of the conversation. Let me know if you think guides are something that people must have, or if it's something that you play without personally. And as always, have a great day.